Hello everyone, today I will introduce you the audience as producers. Facebook has more than 400 million active users who upload 3 billion photos every month, with the average user spending nearly an hour a day using the site. 106 million people are registered with Twitter, sending 55 million tweets per day, and Twitter search engines receive 600 million queries per day. 8 years' worth of content is uploaded to YouTube every day and over 700 billion viewings occurred on the site in 2010. Considering none of these sites existed 10 years ago, their growth has been remarkable and perhaps can be seen as evidence of the shifting relationships people have with media, as we move from audiences being merely consumers of the media products produced for them, to being active makers and distributors of their own content. The traditional media text propagation path is a process by which the producer creates text and unilaterally forwards it to the receptor. After Weibo 2.0, the media's transmission route is the producer produces the text and spreads it into the recipient. The recipient transmits the text to the next recipient through his own analysis and recreation, and the next recipient also spreads the text he created to others. Therefore, the recipient also acts as a producer. There are two examples to explain this. In the election of Barack Obama to the American presidency in 2008, which has been dubbed the first internet election. This is because Obama's campaign used social media to both disseminate its message and organize volunteers willing to help with all the work such as a campaign requires. Similarly, the protests and campaigns across North Africa and the Middle East in 2011, known as the Arab Spring, have been seen to be reliant on social media such as Twitter, as this enables people not only to organize those protests, but also to spread information about the events to be reported by those involved rather than by traditional media. Indeed, the idea of the importance of the crowd has recurred across such analyses, arguing that bringing people together is one of the most important things new media can do. However, some argue that it is too easy to get carried away with naive celebration concerning the radical potential of new media and the power it affords audiences as producers. For example, the net delusion. Morozov argues that the Internet has been a far more useful tool for those already in power, for it allows businesses and governments to track the activities of citizens and disseminate propaganda, while the Internet as a whole has become as commercialized and business-run as those systems it was supposed to subvert. Morozov therefore caused continued excitement about the liberating potential of the Internet, cyber-utopianism. Similarly, concerns has been raised about the digital divide, that is, the access to new media forms is not equal. While the Internet is often referred to as free, it actually requires technologies which are not financially within the reach of everyone on the planet, meaning that it is often those from the most deprived areas who fail to have access to those forms of media it is argued will help them better their lives. It is also the case that dominant language on the Internet is English, disempowering those from other nations and reinforcing those disparities, the technology to problematize. In media, simply just the next phase of electronic colonialism. The Internet is already becoming commercialized and business operating, and has failed in its initial goal of reversing the power monopoly of the large group. Clay Shirky cites the example of his uncle, Howard, who runs a traditional newspaper. His uncle criticized it as TV on paper and held it up as further evidence of the dumbing down of American culture, but he also understood the challenge that USA Today presented, with its color, printing, and national distribution. The Richmond Daily News, but in fact, the real competition for traditional media is not USA Today. The principal threat to the Richmond Daily News, and indeed to all newspapers, small and large, not competition from other newspapers, but radical changes in the overall ecosystem of information. The idea that some was many people in the newspaper business, the same people who worried about the effects of competition like USA Today, missed the significance of the Internet. For people with a professional outlook, it's hard to understand how something that isn't professionally produced could affect them. Not only is the Internet not a newspaper, it isn't a business or even an institution. There was a kind of narcissistic bias in the profession. The only threats they tended to take seriously are other professional media outlets, whether newspapers, TV, or radio stations. This bias had them defending against the wrong were from thing when the amateurs own. Even as websites like eBay and Craigslist of the ad revenues that keep classified ads, real estate and weblogs were letting people like Gnarly Kitty publish to the world for free. The executives of the collapse in communications Costa and the executives of the newspaper around the world are still not able to understand these changes, because like the flip side of Howard's obsession with USA Today, and has to do with the nature of professional self-definition. A profession exists to solve a hard problem, requires some sort of specialization. Most professions adults can exist because there is a scarce source that requires ongoing management. Librarians are responsible for organizing books on the shelves. Newspaper executives are citing what goes on the front page. In these cases, the scarcity of the resource itself creates the need for a professional class. There are few libraries but many patrons. There are few channels but many viewers. In these gatekeepers, simultaneously providing and controlling access to information, internet communication, ephemeral goods. To label something a profession means to define the ways responsible for the professionals become cases other or in which it is more than just a job. In the case of newspapers, professional behavior is guided both by the commercial imperative and by an additional set of norms about what newspapers are, how they should be staffed and run, what constitutes good journalism, and so forth. These norms are enforced not by the consumers, but by other professionals in the same business. A professional learns things is in a way that differentiates her from most of the populace, and she pays as much or more attention to the judgment of her peers as to the judgment of her customers were figuring out how to do her job. It is to be hard to move words, image, and sound from creators to consumers. No matter in publishing, printing, or album distribution, media needed to solve the problem of information transmission. Therefore, media enterprises realized the control of various media and obtained profits from the public. However, production, reproduction, distribution, and other issues are now greatly simplified, resulting in the control of the media is no longer fully in the hands of professionals. Now everyone with a computer has perfect unrestricted copying capabilities, and the digital distribution of text and images deprive the newspaper of its authority. Television and newspapers have changed in the environment in which newspapers survive and operate, but the text is still monopolized by newspapers until the advent of the Internet. Instead of introducing new competitors into the old ecosystem, the Internet has created a new ecosystem. To illustrate mass amateurism, the authors cite the example of American Congressman Lott. Lott made propaganda remarks at the birthday party of the retired senator. Initially, the news did not cover the event, but only the senator's birthday. According to the principle that what is not important today will not be important tomorrow, it was not reported at all. But Lott's speech was collectively opposed by the bloggers because there was no concept of a news cycle. On the weekend, many bloggers slammed Lott's speech. Only 3 media reported his speech before. On the day of his apology, 12 media reported the incident and added 21 more the next day. The cycle of traditional news does not work. This story suddenly changes from not worth reporting to significant news. Until recently, the news has meant two different things: events that are newsworthy and events covered by the press. In that environment, what identified something as the news was professional judgment. What the Lott story showing us from now on, news can break into the public consciousness without the traditional press winning it. Indeed, the news media can end up covering the story because something has broken into public consciousness via other means. Because of the way of the internet age, the cost of finding like-minded people has been lowered. People can easily find and connect with people who share their interests. The scarcity of the resource itself creates the need for professional class. Professional class become gatekeepers. They pay as much more attention to the judgment of their peers as to the judgment of her customers when figuring out what to do her job. That's why they miss the significance of the internet. Internet control over the media is less completely in the hands of the professionals. The generation of the network allows people to share their interests, which leads to control over the media is less completely in the hand of the professionals. So the media amateurization has produced.